You want to know what real heartbreak sounds like? It's your phone ringing in the middle of a workday, and before you even pick up, your gut's already twisting. Something's wrong. Way wrong. That was me the day St. Mary's Hospital called. You're just living your life, working late at your office, and suddenly you're told your pregnant wife is in surgery, stabbed by the neighbor over, get this, the grass being half an inch too long. I mean, if I told you this happened to someone else, you'd probably laugh or shake your head at the insanity of suburban life, but that was my reality, and the second I heard our son didn't make it, I swear the whole world just stopped. Margaret Foster, that's the neighbor's name. Folks in the Maple Grove subdivision used to call her Karen behind her back. You know, the type always marching around with a ruler, peering over fences, writing violation notices for every leaf out of place, acting like the HOA was her own personal kingdom. But even in my worst moments, I never imagined she'd go this far. My wife Sarah, 8 months pregnant, stabbed outside our own house over a patch of grass. How does a person even process that? I'll tell you this. The confident, happy woman I married was replaced overnight with someone who jumped at every noise and cried when she saw a baby stroller. But the thing about Sarah, she never let fear stop her from staring down the people who tried to hurt her. I want to look her in the eye, she said before the trial. And she did every single day, even when it tore her up inside. That kind of courage, I don't know if I could have done it. Margaret rolled into that courtroom with 3 lawyers. Her husband used to be a judge, so they hired the best bloodhounds money could buy. Their playbook blamed Sarah, say Margaret was mentally ill, and for good measure accused me of using my government job for revenge. Nice try, but every bit of evidence from security footage to witness testimony ripped their story to shreds. And the diary, man, the diary. Margaret wrote everything down from her growing obsession with us to sharpening her biggest kitchen knife the night before she went after Sarah. There it was in her own handwriting, the rage, the bigotry, the plan to teach the Chin family a lesson. You read that and you know this wasn't some heat-of-the-moment madness. This was cold, careful hate. Watching Margaret take the stand, you'd think she might show a flicker of guilt. Nope. She pointed right at my wife and said that woman was destroying our neighborhood. She talked about grass laundry, ethnic food that stinks up the whole street, and the jury just stared disgusted as she dug her own grave. Then against every bit of legal advice, she pointed at me and said, "You know who her husband is? He's the chief minister." Yeah, that's me. I'd kept it quiet, tried to live just like everyone else. But Margaret's arrogance dragged all my secrets into the light. When the verdict came in guilty on every single charge from attempted murder to fraud, Margaret finally looked afraid. Judge Harrison, a guy with ice water in his veins after 30 years on the bench, didn't hold back. "You've shown extraordinary cruelty and selfishness. You murdered an innocent child because you couldn't tolerate neighbors who didn't share your race or bow to your authority. Life in prison, no parole. Plus another 45 years for fraud and civil rights violations." But even as she was led away, her face ashen, I didn't feel satisfied. I'd lost my son. My wife was a shell of her former self. What's a courtroom victory compared to that? I remember the night it all happened, rain pounding, the blue lights flashing outside the hospital, police everywhere. Detective Johnson, this tough old guy I knew from state security, took me aside and laid out what happened. Margaret Foster, knife in hand, yelling about HOA rules, stabbed Sarah 3 times, once in the shoulder, once in the chest, once in the stomach. The mail carrier and a neighbor wrestled her down, called 911, and still somehow the first words out of Margaret's mouth were about enforcing the rules. Our son Michael died before the ambulance even arrived. Sarah didn't know yet. I had to tell her myself, holding her hand in the hospital bed, praying for a miracle that wasn't coming. That scream, the sound of her heart breaking, I hear it in my dreams. Let me back up a sec. People think being the chief minister means you're untouchable. Let me tell you, in that hospital waiting room with my wife bleeding and my son gone, I'd have traded every bit of power I had just to go back to the morning before, when the worst thing on my mind was a cabinet meeting and an oil stain on the driveway. The worst part, Margaret started claiming self-defense, that Sarah, the kindest person I know, attacked her first. Her lawyers demanded to know my real identity, wanted to twist it all into some kind of political vendetta. I had no choice but to tell them, and just like that, the media circus exploded. But that was just the beginning. I promised Sarah right there in the hospital that Margaret Foster would pay for every second of pain she caused. I didn't break a single law, didn't use my office for revenge, but I used every legal avenue at my disposal. I called for a full inspection of her house violations, piled up the place condemned in days. The State Revenue Department uncovered tax fraud, embezzlement, bribes, all of it well documented. The Ethics Commission, headed by a bulldog named Sarah Kim, dug up years of discrimination and abuse of power. Charges stacked up, her assets were frozen, her family left her. The Maple Grove HOA was audited, dissolved by vote, and every petty rule Margaret had weaponized went out the window. A neighborhood meeting for once was filled with relief instead of fear. Sarah, meanwhile, struggled to put herself back together. Therapy, medication, time, nothing could erase the guilt she carried or the hole left by Michael. She blamed herself, and every what-if conversation cut me to the core. We moved to a gated community, hired security, rebuilt as best we could. Then finally, a glimmer of hope, Sarah got pregnant again. The fear was still there, but when our daughter was born, we named her Hope, because that's what she brought us. And somehow, over time, Sarah found her way back to the light, became a voice for other victims, stood up in front of crowds, and told our story so others would never have to live it. When Margaret died in prison a few years later, the warden called me expecting, I guess, some kind of satisfaction. I felt nothing. She was gone, but so was Michael, and nothing would ever change that. Our family kept moving forward. Our daughter Hope, bright and kind, visited her brother's grave every month. Our son Daniel, all energy and stubbornness, asked why Michael couldn't come home. Sarah, little by little, found peace in helping others. The old Margaret foster house became a memorial garden, a place where families sat in the sun and remembered what hate can cost. The new HOA laws I helped write passed statewide, then spread to other states, protecting thousands of families from the kind of nightmare we lived through. Maybe that's the only real justice there is. You want the truth. After all, that what mattered wasn't the power or the headlines. It was the ordinary moments, playing with my kids in the backyard, letting the grass grow a little too long because, honestly, it's just grass. No one's coming with a ruler. No one's measuring your worth by the inch. That's what freedom looks like. So let me ask you, where do you stand on all this? Is there such a thing as just following the rules? Or does real justice mean looking past the petty, standing up to the bullies, and choosing love over fear every time? Drop your thoughts below, because I know I'm not the only one who's lived through something like this. Sometimes the smallest things, like a blade of grass, can show you exactly what's wrong and what's worth fighting for.